The phrase "I met Jesus at the mall" was Travis's idea. So am like a little bit biased. It reminds me of when we first were looking at spaces and we found a space and we were going to be on the bottom level of this business building, which no one would have ever found us. And then we went and visited the mall and we just started talking about it to each other. And we were like, we are literally just a church in the mall. We are those people because we don't want people to have to come to us. We want to be able to go to people and we want to be able to be in the middle of where people can literally walk to Marshall's or Old Navy and see that we're a church and come in and find Jesus.
It was me and Travis in the room. And then I remember researching old Liberty Tree Mall images. We were like, we should put this on a shirt. That clicked for everybody because that is the story of a ton of people and continues to be, right?
There is a testimony of someone who was out walking in the woods. They heard God say clearly, go to the mall. And they were out in the woods, trying to have a conversation with God. What are we doing here? And they came to the mall and they found Netcast.
Story after story after story of people just walking through the mall, right? Saying, what is this? Coming in, getting into community, forming a relationship with Jesus, getting baptized, serving, giving, being in groups. We hear it all the time. It never gets old. It never gets old. It's awesome.
It reminds me of being in the city square and meeting Jesus in a different time and space. This is now our city square and people are coming from all walks of life and just popping in and they're meeting Jesus. And that's a beautiful thing.
I think about the woman at the well, right? If she could have worn a shirt that said, I met Jesus at the well, that's what she'd have walked back to her entire village with. It's a community center. We're here, hopefully loving as well as we know how. And you come to our church, you come to any of our events, you can come as you are, man. It just is. We don't try to pretend to be anything we're not.
Me and Jesus going to get some popcorn at the AMC. That sounds so nice. Taking Jesus to go get some sushi? That sounds delicious. Yeah, no. I think it's very strange being in the mall, but it's so accessible to people without cars, people that just live in this area. It's really cool to be actually in the community. I get weird looks when I tell people I go to a church at a mall, but I think that's just part of the culture shift, right? The New England vibe is oh, you go to church a Catholic church, on Easter, right? And it's no, I go to church in a mall. They're oh, and then they start to walk away. And you're wait, it's not weird. It's weird. It's okay. It's okay to be weird. It's okay to be different.
It's not a cult, Mom.
It's not a cult, Mom.
Who would think that a church could be in a mall? That's wild. That's crazy. I think that God is in the business of doing wild, crazy things.
It's just such a surprise. And the cool thing is, because we work at the coffee shop, we get to see somebody just coming up, bleary-eyed, trying to get a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden you begin a conversation. Within 5 to 10 minutes, their eyes brighten up and they've found home. And it's just awesome.
I remember when they announced at church, hey, we found a place, and they were looking at all different cool venues and places to have church. And when they said, we're gonna have it at the mall, in the middle of the mall, my heart just went, yes, that's so amazing. So it was so exciting because I'm I love how Jesus would go out of the temple and meet people and talk to people. And I love being part of that.
You can get used to the feeling of being a Christian, and so on and so forth. But every time that I see people getting baptized, and sometimes people that I saw walk by, greeted by somebody, they grabbed a cup of coffee and now they're in church. Because that's our scheme, right? We're just fishing people with coffee, with free coffee. Every time that I see them getting baptized, there's just no way that you don't cry because you're seeing Jesus transforming lives. And it stopped becoming about you and the building and the church, and it becomes about Jesus right there. And then you see them being transformed from the old to the new day after day. And you see God doing that in front of you in the middle of a mall. It's mind-boggling. It's insane. It is countercultural in a point. It's not a place of commerce. You cannot rent this. This is free. Come here. grab a cup of coffee. You don't want to stay? That's cool too. We're going to be here next Sunday.
I love the fact that we're in a mall. I love the fact that I walk in on a Sunday morning and I can see down the hall dozens of people taking over the hallway. That energy you can hear, you can feel, and you see just randoms walking by, and I just thank God and pray that the Holy Spirit is just reaching out there. And so that is super cool that we have an opportunity to be in a place that nobody would really expect us to be.
So we have this like a security camera that will overlook the entrance of our space, and there will be moments where you could go on the camera and you'll watch security footage of people walking past and like stopping in front and looking in and like, what's going on in there, right? And so they just start looking like, what is that? I don't know what that is. And then they walk forward, and then they like come back a little bit because it's a little intimidating, and then they walk forward a little bit more, and you just are watching like the Holy Spirit like wooing people in, and the enemy drawing them back out, and the Spirit pulling them in. Next thing you know, like they show up and they're in, and God saves them. It's the wildest thing. And there's so many stories of just that, of people, whether they were getting, gifts wrapped during Christmas season when we do free gift wrapping, or they're just dropping something off or picking something up, or they're hitting the mall for whatever reason, right? And they're just, oh my gosh, I met Jesus at the mall. Like, that's crazy.
I think it complements the unique way that Netcast is. And it also breaks a lot of like taboos when it comes to church. You don't think about church as being malls, I met Jesus when I was a kid. I grew up in church, but I feel like I really met Jesus at the mall because of the way that Jesus is presented to you in a very black and white, like raw form.
I think it reminds us how authentic our church is, how authentic our community is, and of course we are in the mall.
Every time when I invite a friend and I say, our church is at the mall, they're like, what? It makes no sense. I'm like, it does. Just go there. You will see how it is. And when they get there, they are like, oh my God, this is the right place to be. It's amazing. It's different, and it's authenticity, like you said.
The authenticity of Netcast being in the mall is such a good reflection of like, this is real life. We're in the community in a real way with real people, real struggles. This is Netcast.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
To start it, we never had let me back up. Why in the world would we start a church? That's a great question, because I think for us, we never anticipated or desired to start a church. We just really felt like the Lord called us to do this back when we were living in North Carolina. And so the whole idea of it was, it started with a dream. I went to bed one night and I started having the same dream 5 nights in a row. We were in our room, we were literally getting into bed, and I looked at her and I was like, yo, if we were gonna start a church somewhere, where do you think God would call us? And
I kind of breathed heavy and I was like, oh, Boston.
And even the idea of planting a church sounded crazy to us. I was in corporate, right? So you were a stay-at-home mom. We were doing well, making good money. I think I had a 6-figure income at that point in time. We had a house, we had cars that we had a picket fence. We had a dog that didn't work out, but whatever. And Sandy, y'all remember Sandy? The dog Sandy? No, y'all don't remember Sandy? Okay. Sandy was only around for a couple weeks, and then ran away. It was a whole thing. The idea of it was terrifying. So we actually submitted that idea to our pastor at the time, a couple of really good friends, and other people that were kind of what I would say mentors or over us. And we said, if you ever see something like this in us, let us know. Our biggest fear was, we don't want to be heretics. We love the Bible. We want to make sure that we understand the Bible, and we preach the Bible, and we teach the Bible. Our focus was making sure that we are theologically sound. And so we connected with this organization, Acts 29. At the time, they were kind of the most robust, theologically assessing group that was out there. And so we went to them and we were like, listen, assess us. They kind of gave us a yellow light, you need to pause. And their biggest fear was, you could probably start a church and it would take off and you're really gonna hurt yourself and some people in the process. And they just felt like I had some daddy issues, some mom issues that I had to like really work through. Felt like we had some stuff in our marriage that they wanted us to kind of focus on. And then there was some theological stuff that they were like, we think that you really understand the gospel for salvation, but not for like your sanctification and growth. And so they wanted me to do some kind of study on that and to make sure that I was growing in that way. But it was like 3 years after the initial like feeling like the Lord had called us before we ever moved. Now, I'm sitting there in my living room one day and I'm just reading the Bible, and I'm reading in Matthew chapter 4. It says that Jesus was walking by the Sea of Galilee and he saw two fishermen and they were casting their nets. And so I just remember underlining casting their nets, and I wrote in my Bible, Netcast, and I yelled at Beth, who was in the kitchen. I was like, hey babe, if we were to start that church one day, what if we called it Netcast? And she was like, yeah, sounds great. And so it's wild that what started as like the most random thing in a living room or in a kitchen turns into like a people.
There is one more story that could be fun to tell too. On the night before we pack up the huge moving truck to move here, Matt looks at me and he's like, how do you plant a church? And I was like, you better figure it out real quick because we're like on our way. Matt decides to stop at the Bischoff's house, who was a associate pastor at the church we were going to at the time, just to say goodbye. We were close friends with the family.
Frank, my buddy, introduces me to everybody. He's like, this is Matt, his wife's Beth. Beth is in the car, the kids are in the car. They're about to go and move to the Boston area to go start a church. And it was like, let's pray over him. They're a little bit like charismatic, right? And so, you know, I got some people with hands on me, like, you know, around me, circled around. And then there's this one woman who just like walks away and just starts like rocking in front of a wall. And she's just kind of rocking. And you always know if you got like a rocker in front of a wall, she's gonna get something from the Lord. Like, you just know, right? And so she's rocking and she goes, I have a vision. I just want to share. She begins to say, I'm standing on a shore right now. And Matt, you're on the shore and you're with your family and you are casting a net out into the ocean. It immediately grabbed my attention. I'm like, okay, you know, like charismatics are the best, yo.
I did not know what the name of the church was.
I had no idea, right? And so Frank looks at me and I look at him and he's like, I was like, I don't know either, bro. So she's like, and now you're pulling these fish in, and these fish, I can see them, they're turning into people. They're now casting their nets out into the ocean, and then they're pulling in people. And she's like, I see thousands of net casters just out there on the shore. And I almost fell out my seat, bro. I almost fell out my seat. She named our church. At this point, Netcast isn't a thing. Like, I know our church name's gonna be Netcast, but Netcast doesn't even exist yet, right? It's just crazy.
Cut. We're done.
No, we're done. That's a true story.
The coolest part is that the people that were like, that she saw pulling the nets in, then multiplied and started doing the same thing and just kept doing the same thing. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I kept this in my wallet for 9 years. Pastor Matt gave us this as part of a campaign as Netcast was growing. For me to see this in my wallet was always a reminder of the mission of Netcast, the mission of the church, but it's God's mission.
It was in that moment that God spoke from heaven right to me in my mind and said, Matt, this isn't about basketball. This isn't about land. This is about the netcasters that I have called together. Because I ordained where you live and when you would live there for one reason, so that man would seek God, perhaps reach out and find him, because he's not far from any one of us. This net belongs to you as much as it belongs to me. Like, what if we really believe that? I'm calling you to go all in. I'm calling you to give like you've never given before. I'm calling you to serve like you've never served before. I'm calling you to leverage your influence like you've never leveraged your influence before. I'm calling you to lead like you've never led before. Because this new season is about us being all together, all in.
The apartment that we moved into became essentially our first church building. Our offices were up on the top, and then we had our vision nights there. When we first moved, Matt went on Facebook and said, if you have a cup of coffee with me and talk about God, I'll pay for your coffee. And that's how he met people. It was October 10th, 2010. We invited everybody that we had met that we had some sort of connection with to come and have a bite to eat with us. We thought maybe 6 or 7, maybe 8 people would show up. So we got Qdoba. Did I say that right? Did I say Qdoba right? Y'all are laughing.
I'm just laughing at something else.
What did I say?
You said something else.
Okay.
Bennett knows.
Bennett, what did I say? Tell me, I want to know. When people showed up for the first vision night, there was like so many people, and I'm the extrovert, and I kind of freaked out, so I ran upstairs.
And I was like, you need to come downstairs right now.
Yeah, I went to go get my Bible, and I just never came back. I was kind of terrified, came down, didn't know what to do, because I was thinking we're just gonna all be like hanging out. I wasn't expecting to like, you know how weird it is to host 30 people, and you don't really know any of these people, and so, what?
Yeah, so you got weird.
So I disappeared.
And then
So we started in the house. Then the North Shore Magazine found out that we had moved into town. And so they wanted to do like a very short little thing for their Christmas edition. I wound up getting an interview with this guy, and he liked our story so much that he was like, man, we want to do like a full 8-page colored feature on you guys or something like that. And I was like, okay. He was asking questions about like, where does our church meet? And I was like, in our house. And he's like, you know, that sounds super cultish, right? So
I know a lot of people think we're a cult, but I can leave whenever I want. My mom thinks it's a cult, so I can say that. It's not. It's not a cult, Mom.
I always tell people, I think like Netcast is like a Kool-Aid, and I think we've drank the Kool-Aid, and I'm okay with that because I feel like the Kool-Aid is amazing, and it's like just part of
Hell yeah.
part of our life.
That's going to help people thinking we're a cult. That's perfect.
I don't care.
I love it.
Please come and see for yourself if we're a cult.
he was like, well, is it always going to be like that? And I was like, no. He's like, well, where are you going to go next? And when are you guys starting? And so as this was all going on, the YMCA had contacted us. We started serving Thanksgiving dinner for the YMCA people that were living in Section 8 housing above. And so the Y thanked us and was like, if you ever need a place to meet, you know, you can use our space. And I was like, great. They gave me keys like right there on the spot.
Yeah,
and that was
free.
like crazy.
Did not
totally
charge
for
us
free.
rent.
It was nuts, yo. It's just the favor of God. Like, it's just crazy how the Lord just directs your steps and kind of goes before you. And so,
So we were able to put in the magazine that like our first ever church service was going to be at the YMCA on Cabot Street on January 23rd.
yeah.
And it ended up being like the cover of the magazine, like a
Yeah, it
huge
was
spread.
Yeah, keep in mind, like at this point, we had never multiplied a group. I had never preached 2 weekends in a row. I had never led a church before. I've never been like the primary shepherd for anybody. We'd never been in ministry together. Like, this is all brand new. And within 4 months of moving, we accidentally had a church of 120 people.
Fun fact, Bennett, we walked to Netcast. Can I tell a Netcast story now? Is this okay? Yes? Oh, you can't talk on the, oh, I'm so sorry. This is gonna be a while. I'm just telling you.
We were walking down Cabot Street in Beverly
To brunch.
to brunch, but then we saw a billboard. What are those?
A-frame, a sandwich
A-frame,
board.
a sandwich board that said "Come to church," and so we went to church.
I was a little bit mad. I was excited about Bloody Marys, but in we went.
It was great. Love at first sight.
No, it wasn't.
I loved it. I loved it.
I walked in and I got dude bro'd. This young kid was like, dude, bro, I know you. And I was like, you don't know me. And he was like, no, I know you. And sure enough, we sat down and that same dude that bro'd me jumped up on stage and was like, my name's Matt and this is our church. And afterwards, it was a small enough church that there was a greeting line. Matt was talking to Brittany and was like, lady, your husband was grilling me the entire time. And so we shook hands and we walked outside and I was like, well, that was fun. Can we go to brunch? And Brittany was like, I love it.
So we were at the YMCA for about a year and we like outgrew their gym. We were looking for a new space and there was a middle school down the road and we reached out to the middle school and they were like, we'd love to have you. After a year of being at the Y, we moved into Brisco Middle School and we wound up being at Brisco Middle School for I think 8 years total.
Yeah.
Here we are, we're here standing in the YMCA where this thing began. We're moving, we're out of here. We started here at the YMCA and we've outgrown it. We're gonna be moving now to this place. And here we are. And when we started at the YMCA, I mean, we didn't really know what was gonna happen. And we had no parking, we had no seating, we had, you know, horrible acoustics and sound. We've got 150 parking spaces here on campus. We've got hundreds and hundreds of seats. We don't exist to just build an infrastructure. We exist for the glory of Jesus. Be a city on a hill, dead center, you know, amongst everybody. What up, man? Dude, give me a hug, bro.
Brisco Middle School, we used to joke that you had to have faith to simply sit in the seats, like they were just going to collapse under you. That was such a sweet time because we were one service. And so the entire community met at once. And I remember grieving when we had to move to 2 services. And I was like, no, I won't get to see everyone. Like growth. Like it was such a bittersweet moment.
As different as it might have looked, it's still pretty much the same. We love Jesus. We love people. We love the Bible. We love families. Yes, it might look different on a Sunday morning or the website, but it really is the same once you kind of strip away all of that.
Moving to Brisco Middle School made us seem more legitimate to the community. More people started showing up, but a lot of the people that started showing up are church people now. In the beginning, it was like non-church people, brand new Christians are getting saved at the church, and now all of a sudden there's this influx of some disgruntled Christians from other churches that don't like the way that things are there, and so they want to come here now. And all these Christians had their way in which they viewed their pastor and how to relate to their pastor and what the pastor's wife is supposed to be like. They had a lot more opinions. And when you're trying to start a church from nothing, you're trying to build a culture, and they were beginning to kind of infiltrate the culture a little bit. That went on for years. People are fighting about this is the way the structure should be, and this is how you should operate, and this is how you should preach, and this is how you should do ministry. And eventually it got to the point where we're going to be focused on reaching more people for Christ, period. And if you don't like that, and if you're not wanting to get in the boat and row with us, it's time for you to get out the boat. And so that was a really interesting time. But I think what we learned as a church while we were at Brisco was how to keep the main thing, and how to keep our focus and our attention on reaching more people for Christ, right? Discipling the people that God sends us. But man, we are here, we have a mission at hand. We are trying to tell every single person about Jesus and get them connected to a local church. First here at this local church, and if not, somewhere else. And that was our driving force, and we never looked back.
Now we are big and we have teams and we have people on staff that lead teams. But back then, it was like from stage, Matt would be like, hey, we're taking communion. Carl, can you, do you mind grabbing and doing communion here? Who's over there? Can somebody grab? So it was very much so that church plant, but of our focus is Jesus. We're not focused on systems. We're not focused on like, oh, let's make sure that this all looks great. It's like, no. We're here to tell you about Jesus. Right? And the stuff that we haven't figured out, we're going to do it on the fly. And honestly, that was one of my favorite, like, you feel so honored where if Matt knows your name, it's like, Will, can you do communion? You're like, heck yes, I want to do communion. Of course. Of course. Is there any hand sanitizer?
You would go in, you would set up, and then there was kids ministry in the cafeteria, and then you would tear down. For communion, the stage was set, and then the communion was down in front. And I don't know if you've heard the story yet, but once a mouse went up onto the communion table and started eating the bread. So
we were going through a sermon series called Church in the Wild, which was kind of funny because of what happened here, but...
So I'm up there and I'm just preaching and the crowd starts laughing. And so, I'm thinking like they're with me, And I have this like really emotional ending and, everybody's like with me and we're gonna now go into communion, the body of Jesus and broken for us and the blood of Christ. And as I'm explaining all of this, Travis comes up and whispers in my ear, bro, we can't do communion this week. And I was like, what's going on? He goes, bro, while you were preaching, mice jumped on the communion bread table and started to eat it. That's why people were actually laughing. Apparently, like everybody knew except me. I had no idea. And so I'm trying to serve communion bread that everybody knows. We ain't touching that bread, bro. We ain't touching that bread.
No communion. And Matt's like, what? What's happening here? I'm like, no communion. Matt's like, well, I guess we're not doing communion. And so then we were like, we need to move. And we moved to Conwell. That's not how exactly the timeline, but it's a good story.
But it was a good segue into being like, guys, we need to get out of Brisco.
We need a new building.
We're outgrowing this place in more ways than one. So.
Yeah, it was infested, dude. It was terrible. Yeah. And then true story. The next week when we came back to church that week, we saw dead mice that were in that area. And what's crazy is the Bible says if you are not a believer and you eat the communion bread or drink the communion wine, you are eating and drinking judgment upon yourself. I was like, dang, this is biblical. That's crazy. So anyway, I don't know what you do with that.
So we had been meeting at Brisco, and we honestly were enjoying being there, but they decided that they were going to rebuild the middle school. Essentially, we, for whatever reason, we couldn't move with them. We found ourselves we need to find a place now. Mm-hmm. So we started looking everywhere as a church.
Yeah, and we got to the place where we're gonna have no home. And so we looked everywhere you could imagine. There wasn't a stone that was not unturned. There was not a commercial real estate building that we weren't walking through. We just could not find anything that fit what we could afford or could even fit our church size, because at that point now we had grown to about 500 people. So we found ourselves in a really, really, really rough spot where we were a week away with no home. And I called somebody at Conwell who I connected with, and I was like, hey man, we're stuck. This is our situation. And he was the dean of chaplaincy over there. And he was like, dude, you could meet at our chapel. We only need 8 weeks, man. Only need 8 weeks, because we had some things that we were already working on. If you could give us 8 weeks, that would be awesome. After about 5 or 6 weeks, I was like, can we do 18 weeks? Because we had basically been told by some people over here at Liberty Tree Mall that they were gonna let us get into that space. 8 weeks turned to 18 weeks, turned into 18 months. Yeah. And if you know anything about Conwell, the vibe is way different than what, the YMCA is or our home is. Or
It's
Brisco.
honestly beautiful, beautiful campus. Yeah. And the chapel was pretty, but so didn't feel like Netcast.
Didn't feel like it. Just felt like you were driving into Narnia,
That was a very different vibe. That was in the chapel, and there's an organ, and there's multiple layers, and kids ministry was actually back in rooms, and it was just a totally different vibe, but it still felt like home because the people were there, right? It was such a good example of we are the church. No matter what building we meet in, you still have the same smiling face, checking you in and loving on you and serving communion. And I remember this one time, they made the church these boards, and they were people that we wanted them to know Jesus, and we had to write their names on the boards. And then they put those up in the office, and everyone prayed for those people. Every single person that I wrote on that board knows Jesus now. It's just so cool. There's all these moments of God showing up over and over and over again in every building, in every space, because we are the church.
I think in that season, we learned how to endure because everybody in our church knew this wasn't us and this wasn't going to be our home. And we were trying to figure out how to get somewhere else. We've got to figure out what to do next. The church is dying. It's sure, the church is basically shrinking, by the day. It's out there in the boondocks. It's just different. We grew up going to the mall. That's where you did all your first things, right? It's where you kissed your first girl. That's where you stole your first thing, That's where you
I didn't do
yes,
any
you did.
of those
You did all these
things
things. That's where you got chased by the cops for the first time. It was all at the mall. Life revolved around the mall growing up. And so we went to the movies one night, and we come out of the movies, and as we're walking down Liberty Tree Mall hallway, there's a store called Kids for Less, and I laughed. And
it was a kids' clothing store, Kids for Less.
Yeah, but its name was Kids for Less.
It was an enormous store.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I laughed at the name, and I was like, somebody's got to redeem that. That's crazy. And I felt like the Lord was like, you should.
We looked at this mall. We looked at a space called Kids for Less, right? Which is insane. Something did not translate there. Somebody did not help that man. But we looked at this Kids for Less space and Spirit Halloween and this furniture store and a yogurt store. And for whatever reason, we looked around this crazy mall that at the time looked like it was dying and dumpy. And we're like, this is our crew. Why would we want to do anything else? And I remember the Boston Globe interviewed us, and the lady was like, that was real. There's a lot of wisdom there, getting in this corridor. And I was like, lady, there was no conversation ever anywhere where we were like, it'd be strategically brilliant is let's go to the Liberty Tree Mall. We're like, this is where the Lord wants us. And the Bible says the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. And so we're just like, we're in. It's not a pros and cons list. We didn't get that out. It was just like, this is it.
That's where the idea initially came. Now, something that's interesting even before that is like, I had coined this phrase years ago. Like when we first were starting the church, our discipleship track was called Mall to Missions. How do you take somebody, your random everyday person who's just strolling through the mall, and turn them into a missionary?
You also would, Matt has ADD. And so like.
Wait, what? I'm just kidding.
In the beginning years, he would actually go to the mall where it was like chaos to sermon prep. Because that like helped his brain to like be around the world, but then also like it helped him to focus on what he was doing in some weird way. It doesn't anymore, but that he would literally go to the mall to sermon prep.
Yeah,
so.
I would. We just reached out to the mall and we said we would like to talk about being in the mall. We went through all of this due diligence to try to move into that space, and at the last hour, we get a call back from the architect that said there's no egress directly outside. You're an assembly space, and so you can't be in that space. And so it really threw us off because we really were believing that's where we were going to be. I've reached out to the mall. I was super ticked off about this because I'm like, you're the mall. You guys should know like what kind of space we need. You know, we at that point spent like 50 grand and they came back and told us no. So that's 50 grand wasted. I drew this picture that basically outlined out this particular area in the mall that I knew was either temp space or empty. And I said, give us this for the same price. And it was about 5,000 square feet more, and we'll like sign tomorrow. And they came back and they said no. It's our prime real estate. It's directly across from AMC movie theater. There's no way we're gonna give it for that pricing. And so we were stuck again. And so we gathered the elders and it was like, yo, we gotta fast, we gotta pray because the church is shrinking. We know that the Lord doesn't want us here. We gotta figure out what to do. And so we began to fast and pray, and we've prayed and fasted for 3 days. And on the third day, we get a phone call from the mall and they said, listen, we'll give you that space, but we're only gonna give you $500,000 for tenant allowance. And I was like, I didn't know that you gave tenant allowance. Like, I didn't ask for $500,000. So they came back and gave us the building and they gave us money to move into it. Again, it was just the Lord. It was just like his faithfulness is crazy. And so we wound up moving into that space. It took 18 months for them to build it out, completely debt free. And we get certificate of occupancy on March 12th, 2020, which is the same exact day that the Governor Baker, shut the entire state down because of COVID.
We anticipated greater outreach, more community for deeper connection, for our ministries to grow and for our community to grow with them. What we didn't anticipate was COVID. We didn't anticipate our routines being obstructed. We didn't anticipate being on lockdown in our homes, separated from family and friends. We didn't anticipate the isolation. We didn't anticipate the anxiety, the depression, the job loss, hunger, sickness, our hospitals being overwhelmed, pain, and old pains resounding new cries for justice. But in that pain, we were reminded that Christ reigns over all circumstances. Christ over depression, isolation, injustice, sickness, and lack. Christ over COVID. And with Christ, we began to respond. We've responded to the distance by continuing to meet online from our living rooms, bedrooms, and cars. We responded to the injustice by sitting down and having some uncomfortable conversations. By inviting new preachers like Pastor Philip Mitchell, Pastor Kenneth Young, and Beth Tuning, to give us new perspective, correction, and encouragement. We responded to the lack in our community by meeting the call for help and serving where we could. And what we witnessed was that, in that response, there was a greater impact in our community than we could have imagined before COVID. We saw new groups rising up in our community through Zoom meetings and video chats. We saw our church reach more people via online platforms than ever before. Through social media outlets such as YouTube, Instagram, as well as our own website, we saw our audience more than double. We saw needs being met in our community with more abundance than before. We generously gave over $1 million as a church family. With that, we have been able to pay off the medical debt of the entire East Coast of Massachusetts. The Massachusetts Department of Children and Families currently has no families in need. We have been able to serve River House 2 nights a week, as well as offering support to Beverly Bootstraps. In September, when we were finally able to gather again in person, We saw a need to add on a third service in order to meet the increase in attendance. We grew our heart for the house. We now have 112 volunteers, 18 groups with 268 members, 192 partners, and 386 families financially contributed to the mission of the church. Our coffee shop is now open and serving the community throughout the week. In October, we witnessed 18 baptisms. 222 Connect cards have been filled out since August 16th. In our first Discover class in over 2 years, we added 13 new partners and 17 new volunteers. And 10 new groups have risen out of the demand for more connection. As we reach the end of this wild year and reflect on the Christmas story, we are realizing that, as Pastor Matt explained, the power of God often comes in the context of a problem. We couldn't have anticipated the challenges we would be faced with as a community this year, but God's power was able to meet every demand head-on, with better solutions than we could have ever imagined.
For the first time ever, we have our own spot where we don't have to tear down setup, but then it feels like it's taken away from us because COVID. But it was honestly a blessing kind of in disguise because we had a location that we could film from. So we kind of set up our new spot to create all the different COVID videos. We started filming everything, and that was not very fun. It felt like we were planting a church again.
We wound up as a church moving into the space way quicker than most. And I think being in a mall helped us. AMC movie theaters trying to open up as soon as they can because they're now dying. All the retail spots, they're fighting to try to get back open because they're dying. They don't know whether or not malls are ever going to be able to be open again. So you got some people in the mall that aren't paying their leases, but we're paying our lease. The mall's beginning to enjoy us there because we're actually paying our bills, whereas Petco's dying and they're not going to pay their bill. And we became this prime tenant, I think, in the mall. And so we wound up being able to launch again pretty quickly. I think we had our first gathering there. I want to say it was end of June or early July. And I think that was pretty awesome. I think a lot of people began to show interest in our church again. Now we had shrunk. I think the first time we gathered, we had under 200 people. So we went from a church of 500 people pre-COVID and then moving and building this space to now 200 people showing up to our first Sunday. In a weird way, we never slowed down. When we first moved into our current space, I remember, people telling us the room was too small because there was only 350 seats. And I was like, yeah, but we'll do 2 services and 700 people's crazy. Would we ever have 700 people coming to our church? So it went from filling up 350 to then having to do 2 services. And then eventually we started doing 3 services. And I would say about 18 months ago is when something began to shift and our church really started to grow again. With all of these people, we felt like our services were just like a conveyor belt, get them in, get them out. And we just hated the way that it felt. Cookie cutter, it just overly systematic, not a lot of freedom in our gatherings. We were like, we're just gonna go to 2 services. We had to build an overflow space out, thinking we're just gonna shrink back to 2 services and just see what happens. And it just blew up. All 2 services got full, overflows now pumping. We had to add night service now. We've just tried all sorts of things, right, to try to do our best to make room for everybody when we gather. That has forged a ton of growth in different ways. So our groups ministry in the last year went from 29 groups to 45 groups now. And, we've got all these different things going on in our church and so many people volunteering and serving. It's just been awesome.
When I think of Netcast, I think of authenticity. I come from a long lineage of pastors, and I never knew there was a real freedom inside of church world from just being authentic and known. I think that's a buzzword that a lot of people use, but I've never been in a place where it was real. It's just given me the freedom to be a kid again with the Lord. I felt like going to seminary and doing all these things. I had to always have the right theological answers. I had to always know the right things. Man, Netcast has shaped me so much because I feel the freedom to not have to know everything and enjoy, like a child, the mystery of not knowing everything. And it's led to so much more humility in my life than I had. I've got way more humility now, I believe. I mean, what a crazy statement to make about humility. That's wild. I hope you would say, yes, I'm way more humble now than when we got married, but that's such a testament to the Lord, certainly, but his work here by not feeling like I gotta have it all figured out.
It's not just from the community, but the leaders themselves. We had our 5-year anniversary of celebrating Netcast being planted. There was a DJ. the DJ, I'm not sure if he realized we were at church because the music he was playing. But then I turn around and I see Matt and Beth, and they are dancing and they're like lip syncing every song where they're like, from the windows to the wall. I mean, it was the biggest celebration. And it was just, again, authentic people like having a great time. And we all joked about it. They were like, he definitely doesn't know that like we're a church. But it was just such a celebration of what God can do. And it was so fun. I was on staff for a little while. And to see like behind the curtain is just as real and like raw as it is on a Sunday or in community groups is like the best thing ever. I remember our first Sunday, Matt talked about stepping on one of Daniel's Legos and how it like sent him into like a rage. And I remember my husband leaning over to me, and we weren't believers yet. And he was like, okay, this can be our church, you know, because it was such a real like moment of I'm not the most perfect person and I will fail sometimes. I'm going to try to do better, and God's grace is there to fill in the gaps. And it was just like, oh, this is what church is supposed to be like, real people.
One time I was dealing with a very complicated immigration thing. I was going through a horrible time, and I had just come back from an appointment with the DMV in which I was humiliated like I've never been before. I sat in my car crying. And I was like, Lord, I don't need this. And I remember being like, oh, I need to go lead prayer tonight. I came in here and I literally opened up the meeting and said, I have nothing to say today. I have nothing to share. My heart is broken. I feel the weight of this life, this broken world that we live in. I feel sad, and I just need Christ just as much as you all do. And I said that in tears, and I said, I'm gonna grab my guitar like I would if I was in my home, and I'm gonna worship my Jesus, and that's what we're gonna do. And you join me if you want. I'm not here to be Pastor Breno today. This is me, Breno as a person. I wanna invite you to see how in my life, my relationship with God develops in moments like this. But it was nothing more than just me being like, man, I'm just gonna be real with these people and show them we're not superhuman just because we're on the platform. And the Lord is available to us all.
One of the things that I fell in love with him when we first started dating was that like he was the same person no matter who he was around, what we were doing. He was always just the same. And I grew up in a world where it was like people just changed according to who they were around sometimes, especially in church world, right? You'd be like hanging out with somebody and then they'd get up on the stage and they'd be like, okay, brothers, let's get into this. And it's like, whoa, that was very different than the way that you sounded 10 minutes ago. Authenticity has always just been like a huge thing for him. And I think that that bleeds into our church. He's just gonna get up on stage and tell it how it is, even if most pastors would never, ever do that.
In the past, I've felt the effects of hiding my true self, and that has never turned out well. And I would rather live on the edge a little bit by being my most authentic self than hiding that. There's much more danger in hiding it than there is just being it. What's interesting is like at our church, I have no problem telling my darkest moments, my sinful days. And at times I could go too far, maybe even be too honest. And I think that might have gotten me in trouble at times. But I'd rather be in trouble in that way than in trouble in a way that's a little different where I'm hiding my true self. You know, every church says that they want to be authentic and there's a desire to be authentic. I don't even know if most people are truly authentic with themselves. The longer I live, the more I'm on this journey, the more authentic I get, because the more I get to know myself. Because of that, there's a freedom at our church for other people to live that way as well. And isn't that the heart of the gospel if we're just like keeping it real, right? The heart of the gospel is that you need Jesus just like everybody else. I need Jesus just like everybody else. And so why would I sugarcoat or wear a Christian mask and pretend I'm something I'm not when the gospel, the heart of the gospel is you need Jesus because you're broken. So why pretend that you've somehow beat the verse that says you have a propensity to evil?
We are broken human beings and we have junk. It's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay there, right? Now that you've been exposed to it, let's figure out a way to kind of keep moving forward. So Matt and Beth have modeled that in their own life, and that has bleed into the culture of Netcast. And I mean, that's how we are. We can't be comfortable in a box of how we treat church. If God's doing something and it is a little bit unique and it's biblical, if you read the Bible, it's pretty wild, right? So we aren't set in these narrow lanes. Like God's bigger than that. So if he's doing something, let's go explore what it is that we're doing. Matt and Beth have been very open to those experiences and seeing what God's doing and just following where God's leading. And it doesn't look like any other traditional church model, which I believe that Matt has this bent of like, I don't care, I'm gonna follow God. Whatever criticisms I get or whatever it is, if I'm following what the Lord's leading to and the Bible says I read it here, that's what I'm gonna do.
God is first, family second, work is third. They model that. Even just seeing like Matt and Beth in their marriage, like my husband and I have modeled things in our marriage after them. Like there's no part of their life that I have seen that they're like not practicing what they preach. So I've always really appreciated that about them.
Beautifully said. Wow.
And you don't feel like this is such a New England thing too. When you go down south, you're like, I almost hate that people are always like, oh, can I help you? Bless your heart. Everything, like people are flipping you off and like giving you the finger and swearing at you as you're driving. Like that's the kind of like vibe that we all grew up with. So you're used to it. When you feel like people are being fake with you, you're like, I'm not doing this. You don't feel that when you're around Matt and Beth. I think that's why so many people are like, okay, Matt will like make fun of himself on stage all the time. And he's real. He's like, this is what I struggled with. This is what is going on. I am in therapy right now. Like I think it's so healthy. He shouldn't pretend to be this like mega pastor that has no issues going on, and he doesn't do that. I was driving one day and it was during a nor'easter and I was going to the dentist. Should have known, never go to the dentist. It's a trap. It's all lies. Anyway, a giant tree fell on my car. My whole car was, I have a photo of it, surrounded by this giant tree. I sent out like a text to staff like, hey, I won't be in today. My car's totaled. My family was like, are you okay? Are you okay? But the Netcast people were the ones that were like, can we bring you food? Do you need to borrow a car? Can we help you with anything? Even when my husband had to be hospitalized for something like minor surgery a few years ago, kind of like randomly, it wasn't like a scheduled surgery. Do you need food? Can we buy you dinner? Matt and Beth offered to buy us dinner. Can we take your kids for you? Like, just worry about him. So having that, especially as like a young mom who was also working at the time, I don't know how to describe to people that don't have that. Like, I don't know how they're living their lives. I would never leave my house if I didn't have that kind of support.
When I walked in the doors 14 years ago, I was a completely different person. I used to do tarot cards and Reiki, trying to fill a spiritual hole that we know only Jesus can fill. This one Sunday, it was baptism Sunday. I just felt the Holy Spirit in such a real, like, raw way. Matt did an altar call, was like, all right, this is your moment. Come to the back if you're ready to be baptized. And I did. I got up, I left my seat, I walked to the back. I opened up the Brisco stage doors and there were people like jumping for joy and they were so excited to be back there. And I was like, oh no, this is not from, I was this broken person, like dealing with all my sin, like feeling the weight of my sin. And I was broken. And I was like, okay, so I can either go get baptized or I can go back to my seat. Which one's scarier? I went back to my seat. There were 79 people baptized that day. I would have been the 80th. I went back to my seat and I just bawled. I just cried. One of my best friends, Brittany Schimpf, was there and she prayed over me and she was like, your heart's been baptized today. You're not gonna let the enemy have this. And it was just such a transformative day. My husband was at a health fair working that day and I called him and I said, we gotta talk. And he said he knew in that moment that something had shifted. And we went for a walk on the beach and he was like, from that moment, he'll still tell you to this day, I've never been the same again. And the fact that I could show up to Netcast time and time again, just being myself in wrestling with the things that I was wrestling with. If I had gone to another church that didn't help me wrestle with those things in a loving way, would I be? Jesus knows, I don't. Would I have gone back to church? For 3 years, I said, okay, I'm gonna pray for my husband, wait till he's ready. We're gonna do the baptisms together. Like we entered marriage together, we're gonna enter this next covenant together. And for 3 years, I prayed for him. And after 3 years, he got baptized.
When you guys think about Netcast, what comes to mind?
Home.
Do you want to expand on it a bit?
I cannot have kids naturally. I found out after I already had a kid. We had a 3-year-old and I had gone through some surgeries and I was told that I couldn't have kids. I had a lot of infertility issues. But God gave us another kid naturally. I got pregnant with Olivia, and very early in the pregnancy, we found out that she had an extra set of chromosomes. She had triple AD, which is not compatible with life. So we knew she was either gonna pass in the womb or she was gonna be born alive and then pass an hour after she was born, or because it's not compatible with life. We were not attending any church at the time. So we went through the whole pregnancy by ourselves, right? And I was pregnant with her when we started coming to Netcast. She's been to Netcast at least once. She was born on Christmas Eve, and then they stopped, right? We took a break. They took a break until January. We came to this Netcast, Good Lovers After Dark, just for couples. And that's when they asked, for the couples there to share their story. And that's when we shared our story. He said that we were grieving that we had just lost our daughter. She had passed in the womb, and we had all these people come up to us and they formed a line, literally. And that's why we say Netcast is home, because we literally felt like so much love. These people, they formed a line to come and talk to us and hug me. And I was not really in the mood of being hugged. I was grieving. I grieved for a long time. We had people pray for us, and we had other people share their stories with us, people who have gone through the same thing, or
they invited us for a group that night.
They invited us for a small group that night. And then I think right after that, we came to New and Netcast, and that's where we started talking and we shared our story with him at New and Netcast, yeah.
During the death of my son and that whole week, he was at our house asking us questions, getting to know Mike. He didn't know Michael that much, but this woman who we knew was kind of hyper spiritual basically called me up and said, can I go pray for the body to come back from the dead? And it was so shocking. And I was like, no, you can't do that. And then so she had said something like, well, Satan stole your son and it wasn't God's will. And it was so I knew that was wrong. But when I bounced it off Matt, he was so great. He's like, do you want me to go? I will go today. I'll go talk to her. You want me to go talk to her right now? And it was almost like, you want to go? but it was I've never been so pastored, personally pastored. He's like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And then he said, okay, this is what it is. You tell her I'm sorry, she can't come to the funeral. She's not your prophet. She's not. And he had such wisdom. But I could see him going, oh yeah, how dare someone do that to a grieving mom.
Right.
And just the compassion there with the fight. It was beautiful. I thought that was so amazing. And Beth, during the whole thing, the whole funeral, they set up all his things. They said, bring us some stuff. And they set it up so beautifully. We had a bunch of army guys coming,
about 400 people in all.
And they set up this huge 16-foot charcuterie board, food, so they'd all have food. And when I walked in to check it out, I just broke down and cried. Beth's mom was here. She's amazing. And she said, yeah, we've been cutting vegetables and stuff since 5 this morning. And I was it wrecked me. She goes, what, don't you like it? And I'm like, no one's ever done something like this for us, for me. And that's Netcast. I mean, that's the love and the length they'll go for their own, and I definitely we felt through the whole process lifted up,
oh yeah,
as though we're
literally carried the whole time.
Yeah, so I know that's not the only thing about Netcast we've come to love. They've trusted us with Alpha. They've trusted us to disciple. They've respected our age, not like you're too old to be part of our cool young church. They've been yeah, what? You've walked in some stuff that we haven't walked in yet.
Our daughter was diagnosed with cancer when she was a wee little babe. And
wee little babe.
She was 9 months. And Netcast was there for us maybe I do need the tissues. Netcast was there for us in all the ways that we needed, in ways that we didn't know.
We didn't even know.
They showed up for doctor's appointments and prayers and food and laundry.
Nobody should be washing my underwear, but they did.
They did.
Super embarrassing. We had people who showed up and just drove our daughter for 4 hours up and down 128 corridor just so we could sleep. we feel completely surrounded and cared for, because we were kicking so hard to just stay above water that we knew. I mean, at half the time we didn't know where our son was. We knew somebody from church picked him up from school and loved on him, but we didn't know where he was. And that's the kind of authenticity that you can't manufacture. That is a God-ordained authenticity of people that were surrounding us and thinking about things that we couldn't even vocalize we needed. They were just on it.
Tyler was born perfect and great, but when he was about 9, he was diagnosed with a very rare immune disease called RAC2, and it's so rare that only 10 people in the whole world are diagnosed with it, so there's not a lot of research, and he's the only one that's not genetic. We had just started going to church, but Pastor Matt's kids go to the same school as Tyler, and whenever he was in the hospital, Pastor Matt would show up and visit him. We had people from community come and visit us in a hospital. We get a call from the nurses, oh, there's like this huge group of people downstairs, and we were like, what? Oh, from your church. And there were literally like 30 people downstairs.
So many people there.
Yeah, to visit Tyler, just to have fun, to make him laugh.
They brought him gifts. We were new in Netcast.
Yeah.
So we were not expecting that much support and love.
So if we were Boston Children's on Sunday, he would have to watch, all the nurses, would come to our room because we had like the worship, band like so loud, and, he wanted to watch. And then the minute he was out of the hospital, there were cases that we would come on a Saturday.
Oh my God.
Next day, he's like, we have to go to church. And I was like, you just got out of the hospital. Tyler, I want to be there. When Tyler would be getting like really sick, or she would call the church and say, I need prayer warriors. They would gather together and pray for Tyler. So in 2023, Fabio donated 40% of his liver to Tyler. The whole church supported us. They all visited us. Pastor Matt was there right before the surgery. Tyler was able to still be with us for another year and a half.
Yeah.
But then unfortunately in July of 2024, he passed away.
We were so sure that he was gonna come out of that alive, but he didn't. So we were lost, but we prayed and we decided to cremate him. And I remember the second day, we went to visit a place where they were gonna do it. I got a phone call from Pastor Matt. He called me actually. And he said, Fabio, he calls me Fabio. He said, Fabio, you are not alone. We are here to support you. How can, I never forget those words, how can we help you? And then he said that, he wanted actually to us to go away, like you guys have to go away. And he tried to get us places for us to go. And I was like, I needed that because I was basically lost. And then days later, we decided to do a celebration of life. Whatever you guys need, we are here for you. And I remember he came to our home and sat down with us for hours, asking whatever we wanted to do. He said, whatever you guys want, we are here for you. Netcast is here for you.
Fabio was the one saying, I want it to be a celebration of life, because I know Tyler is alive. He's healed in heaven, and he had so much faith. He loved the church. And Pastor Matt was like here for hours making notes, and so he leaves. And of course, who's prepared for a celebration of life for a 13-year-old kid? And it happens. So the memorial happened, and it was
like one of the
literally,
greatest.
I've had people saying, I started going to Netcast after the memorial because of how the words that your pastor said, the way that he expressed Tyler and your family and the pain, it felt so real that we were like, somebody that can, a pastor that can express with so much, so humble, so real. We want to follow that path. So people started going to Netcast after the memorial. I've had people come to me and say, and that's something that I think it's important to say, I was thinking of taking my life. And when I went to the memorial, I changed. That day I made a decision that I was not going to take my life. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to say that. That's why I said in the beginning that Netcast is part of our journey. They stood by us through the happiness, through the sadness. They still standing by us.
God, yeah.
And we've watched them do it to other families too, and other people too. When we were invited to do this interview, and we knew that we had to say something about Netcast, I was worried that being bilingual, that I would not find enough proper words in English or Portuguese to express how much Netcast means to us, because it's like beyond English Portuguese words.
I was in my dorm room, like in Virginia, a couple months ago watching, 157 people get baptized, and I was just crying because it was just so sweet, and being able to watch it online was so amazing. We've grown so much in a short amount of time, and that's been so cool to watch, and I'm just so ready and expectant for how much we're gonna grow and how much the Lord is gonna do, so.
I also think that for the next 10 to 15 years or however long, like by that point, we do hope to have our own families and kids. And I think it would be super special and super cool to have our kids grow up in the church as well. Kind of how we were. That would be so cool.
It'd be the best.
It would be, amazing.
I'm excited to see how this next generation is gonna take over. In track, when you do a handoff, the person that's the incoming runner is at full speed, and the outgoing runner needs to also be at full speed when that handoff happens. And I just can't wait to see the baton get passed. The way that Netcast is, we're a group of people that disciples people. The whole point is we're training people and we're building people up. So when it's time to pass the baton, we're gonna have already ran our good race.
In these past 3 years, I'd say the church has grown what's the word?
Exponentially.
Exponentially.
I was like, please, someone correction.
Exponentially.
Oh, never mind.
Daniel said it wrong. We're not laughing at you. We're laughing at Daniel.
Seeing where we came from to kind of where we are now, a lot has changed, but the important things haven't changed. That you can go 15 years and your mission, ideals, your passion to kind of stay the same. That to me is super exciting. And to see the growth, to see all those baptisms, to see new people come to Christ. I'm excited that it's going to continue to look the same.
I would say what I'm excited for the future of Netcast is obviously more growth, because that means more people being changed by the gospel, but also we have so many dreams of being more community focused. We've talked about a food pantry, taking over stores in the mall that are led by Christians, not necessarily a Christian thing, but we're all just there to bless our community.
Matt he was sharing this vision of this whole mall being taken over, and you have a barber shop here and this there. I was like, man, that would be amazing, right? Netcast helping the community
Providing
to
for the
grow and
community.
heal, and it's just so exciting to be a part of this. I really wish we can buy this whole thing one day.
Yeah. When I think about Netcast growing, if it grows, more people are going to have the chance to have their lives changed by Jesus. It's real what happens here. Real humans full of flaws and trying and growing faith together and changing each other's lives, being part of each other's lives, building each other up. That's what I hope. That's what I think about when I think about Netcast growing. Just giving other people the opportunity to have their lives changed.
I think of Tyler, and if Tyler was here, what he would be doing, and I think he would be so proud of Netcast, because I literally see a revival in front of me. All those young boys, young girls, and they're worshiping and not shy. Netcast brings that out on people. And when I think of future, we're gonna represent Tyler. We wanna be there as our family and leading youth and elder to heaven, and heaven on earth and heaven when we get there. I'm so excited that we get to see revival. When I think of Netcast, it's pure revival.
Yeah.
I'm most excited to see what God will do with the generation that is coming. And I would love to see how we're going to hand that down to them, like pass down the ministries to them. I would love to see them serving God, the next pastors, the next ministers, the next people that are going overseas to serve.
There is a surge of people who are quickly learning that they are not the authority in their life and that they need Jesus, and to welcome those people in, it's just super special. And then like 100+ people here on a Tuesday night. For youth, there's 75 people here for a youth worship night. To watch how people are responding, you can't help but get excited about the future.
When I look into the room on a Sunday morning and I see all the people whose lives have been changed, raising their hands, worshiping, engaged, it gives me like chills and makes me want to cry at the same time. And so thinking about how many more lives we're going to get to show the goodness of God and lead them to the Lord, it just makes me excited, because I feel like once you experience, obviously, Jesus and his people, it's literally life-changing.
We want to continue to allow people, wherever they are, to come. And again, right, know who Jesus is. As our primary mission, it's just so incredible to just continue to allow people to do that.
We're just scratching the surface. I feel the Lord's got something bigger for us. Whatever bigger means. I don't care if it's like size, we take on more space, whatever it is. But there is a movement of the Lord that's happening inside the church. God's going to use this community of people to advance his kingdom here on the North Shore and beyond. There's an excitement, there's a transformation, and just seeing the Lord doing some amazing stuff.
When you're really involved in Netcast, you know a lot of people just driving around like Beverly. I'm honking like every 10 minutes. It seems like someone's walking down the road and you're like, hey, how are you? I went to Target yesterday. I saw 2 people I knew. The thought of that just growing more and more and more, it's just cool, like making connections everywhere. It just seems like God is just moving so much in this area.
So Thais always talked about God doing a new thing. God has been saying this for years. I'm doing a new thing. I think that is what's exciting about the future, is the unknown. Anything could happen. And we're pumped about it. Some people would be maybe anxious about it. I'm super optimistic when it comes to this type of stuff. Man, if the Lord tells us to go to another mall, we'll go. If the Lord tells us to go and gather, by the ocean, at the beach, we're gonna do it. If the North Shore Music Theater, Lord please, if that's I don't know if that's gonna stay on camera, but if that's not the next home for us, we be extra pumped about it.
One word: faithfulness. All we want to be said at the end of our run is that we were faithful. In 150 years, nobody's gonna remember our names, Matt and Beth's names, maybe not even Netcast, I don't know. But we want to make a difference here that grows people's awareness of the Lord, following the Lord. We want another great awakening. All we can do is just show up and be faithful. And if at the end of this run, people can say, man, that church was faithful, their leadership was faithful, that's the win.
I hate when people ask the question about like, well, what's your 5-year plan? Or what's the church gonna look like in 5 years? I hate that question, because the truth is I don't know, and I don't think that way. One of the things about the way that my brain works, and I think that the way that the Lord encourages me, is just be faithful with your day. I'm a big believer that the Netcast story has been built on small faithfulness, long obedience in the same direction. The hope is that we just continue to stay faithful, and the Lord will bring the growth, just like he currently has. And I think at the end of our life, what we've always said is what we want to do is we want to be able to hand back to our kids, right, the next generation, like a healthy, gospel-centered body of believers, and say, be faithful with this gift. And whatever size that is, however big the budget is, all of that to us is irrelevant. We don't have a number we're trying to hit when it comes to our budget size or the amount of people that show up on Sunday. We just want to do our very best to keep the main thing, be people who are telling everybody about Jesus, trying to still get people connected to the church, and then hand something healthy off to the next generation. And maybe it's true that the next pastor and leaders and deacons and all of that are currently in our church and they're going to take over, and I hope that that's the case. And we're totally cool with that, because that's the vision. The ultimate vision is that we're going to die. Nobody's going to remember the name Matt Tuning and Beth Tuning in 100 years from now, and we're totally fine with that. But the name of Jesus will be elevated here on the North Shore and beyond because of what God has done through Netcast Church. And that's all that matters to us.
Perfect. We have some of the best people in our church, and I think that we talk about this frequently, but we'll like go on a Sunday. There's never not a Sunday that we don't look out at the church, and the church is that. It's like people. All of the people make up the church, and it's just shocking that the Lord has blessed us with such an amazing group of people that call Netcast home, and literally could not do the ministry without the people there, and they're just some of the best people we've ever known.
Yeah, I would say the wildest thing about celebrating 15 years is that you look at your church and you see 15 years of history and so many people and how God has like formed them over these years, and their stories, and there's most Sundays I'll be in the back room, I'll be in the back of the room at some point in time, and you'll see a couple that you knew was on the brink of divorce at some point, and they're holding hands and they're just praising God. Or, this couple over here, that they went through a horrific season of life where they lost a child, and man, they're like attentive to the word and they're just deep into praise. Or that this person over here is struggling with doubt, and you just, or like you remember a season of life 5, 6, 10 years ago and what this person was going through, and now they're leading on a stage, and they're leading you in worship. And I think like it's those types of things where we're like super humbled that the Lord would allow us to care for and to shepherd and to be a part of such a special group of people. And because I think that's what this church has become to us. It's not like just some congregation. Man, this is like our family, and it's a special family, and it's just really sweet. So what would we say to them? If I could look at our whole church, I would look at them and I would say, thank you. Like if I'm looking at you right now, I would just say like, thank you. Thank you for trusting us, two people who had no idea what they were doing, but just were burdened for an area. And thank you for entrusting your lives to us. We don't take it lightly. It's humbling to know that you would allow us to care for you and that you would trust us to deliver the word of God and to lead you well and to be faithful to you and to be faithful ourselves. And that's a heavy weight to carry. But we're determined to do it as faithfully as we know how. And we're just grateful that you would be a part of this with us and serve the way that you do. And it's you who make Netcast what Netcast is. I mean, we started it, but like you guys are taking the mantle forward. You guys make sure that the gospel goes forward. We're doing our part, but we could not do our part without all of you. We could not do our part without all of you. It would be impossible. And so thank you for being on mission with us and trusting us to lead. And so we love you guys so much.